Hello and welcome to the August 26th, 2021 version of the Helm developer call. Let's see, for announcements, we got 370 RC scheduled for Monday, August 30th, with 370 release on Wednesday, September 8th. There's the milestone link in the notes. So if anybody has time to review or update PRs, that would be great. For discussion, Martin's got a few on there to start. Is Martin there?
Martin is not here.
Which Martin?
Oh yeah, I saw Martin. I thought. Okay, maybe we'll circle back to Martin's see if he joins. Farina, the cache hit and security.
All right. So there's a HIP on, and I was actually hoping Butcher would be here today to talk about it. So there's the HIP on the download cache. And one of the things that came up was security of it and how we could possibly handle that situation. And if you scroll down to Matt Butcher's comments on it, he pointed out that if somebody had a pre-populated this HIP basically does a content-based cache, right? And so you take the digest of a chart and you've got a cache entry for it based on the digest. So if that chart ends up in like 10 different repositories, it's only cached once because it's based on the content, right? And then you use that same digest as already listed in your index.yaml file, right? So the possible security idea came up that issue is if somebody were to intercept your index.yaml file and change out the hash to a different hash, maybe to an older version that had a known security issue in it, then you install the wrong version of something because the index.file got messed with and your cache already had this thing populated into it. It's kind of a hard attack vector, but it is a possible one. And so what I wanted to talk about was the possible mitigation factor was to inspect the cache. When you pull it out of the cache, actually check that it is the right chart and right version that you're looking for, right? So it's the requested one is what was pulled. So it matches what was in the index file. So you can check the name and you can check the version of it. And if we check that information against the hash, is that enough to mitigate this issue? Does that make sense?
Yes,
Adam?
and I would say that should be enough it won't actually mitigate the attack entirely, but it sets the bar prohibitively high, right? Most of the vectors that I identified go away in that case. Someone would have to have access to the local file system in order to edit files, in which case sort of game over. They'd have the index in your local file system. There's nothing. So I would be happy with that as a mitigation on that HIP.
Okay, perfect. That's what I was looking for, just trying to mitigate that, because I like the idea of having this cache. It lets us do some interesting things instead of re-downloading stuff all the time. You do 4 Helm shows in a row and you download the same thing 4 times. We can incorporate that. That was the big one that I wanted to cover. I think the rest of the things. The other thing in this HIP, by the way, to bring up is there's the caching environment variables, right? And so we have a general cache environment variable, and then we've got a repository cache environmental variable. And the repository one by default is based on the general one, but you could override it. So we followed that pattern by adding additional cache environment variables in the HIP, following that same pattern, right? So it would expand the number of environment variables, but it's following the pattern we're doing in Helm today. Is that a bad pattern? Should we just have one cache instead of multiple environment variables? Like, I don't know if anybody's actually changing any of this. I'm not. Does anybody use it? Is this a terrible idea? Should we just have one cache location and say, excuse me, screw everything else?
I can't think of a single other software product in the universe that has as many environment variables for setting directories as Helm does. I think it's totally out of control and that we should basically have a cache directory, a config directory, and that's it. I don't understand how we managed to get to this point where we have like 12 environment variables for setting directories. So I don't want.
I'm looking at how many Go has, and we're not there yet. We're not there yet. Don't worry.
For just path stuff, maybe Go is worse.
Yeah.
Okay. I reckon a
can,
feature for Helm 4, review it, and one cache for all phrase.
One cache to rule them all. One cache to bind them together.
Hey.
Okay.
So Matt, for you, or Farina, sorry, all the other Matts. So how does this tie back into the overall, if we're going to talk Helm 4 too, the overall security story, right? I mean, we've talked supply chain security, et cetera. I mean, if we're going to talk security in the context of this one HIP, how does it tie back into overall security? Just, you know, wondering.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there is one security thing to rule them all, right? Security is like an onion. You do little things here and there in order to enhance security. But I think there's a lot we can do to improve security. Signed indexes, signed indexes. So there's a lot we could do. I think putting together as we work on Helm 4, as we get there, looking at the enhancements we could do to improve security would be a great thing if we have people who want to contribute to that. Yeah, by the way, I have a mental list. Actually, it's probably partly written down of security things I'd love to do. It's a matter of finding people who want to work on security. So if you have folks over at Red Hat who want to work on security things, maybe even people who want to talk SIG store and cosign integration with Helm, I would be very, if you don't know, by the way, folks, there is I'm totally deviating. Does everybody know what SIG store is?
Yeah, I think we have someone working on that already.
So SIG store has a Helm charts plugin, if y'all didn't know. I'll drop a link in here. So there is some thought going to this stuff, but figuring that out more formally would be fun to discuss.
Well, you know, since we're bringing it up and this is recorded, I think Andy wants to come on a call soon to present on SIG store and things that he's been working on there.
Please. If you can arrange that, that would be fantastic.
And David, it looks like you wanted to say something. You're muted.
You're muted.
I found the button. Yes, just along the same line, Karina, we could just arrange bringing Andy as the expert for that, right? So, and then we could certainly, this is a good opportunity for us to also bring in some folks as well. So.
People are always welcome.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So, but figuring that I think would be important. But for the simplest thing with the charts, I just wanted to get a path forward on the whole caching thing. So, because that's something we can even roll out during Helm v3 if we've got some good direction. And I or one of the other folks over here might be able to work on it. We had a proof of concept at one point, but it's a little dated now. We wanted to see if it worked before we did anything. So. Okay, that's all I had for that HIP, since I've totally deviated on other things. But when we talk Helm v4, maybe a whole meeting on security would be a fun thing to have.
All right, next on the discussion list, Martin, functionality on ways to clean failed revisions.
Yeah, so it's just an issue that came up during the week. The OP raised it that they have a series of, where it can build up your revisions in the cluster. The FYI in Helm 3, we set the limit at 10. So there's a rollover then, because people with Helm 2 noticed more config maps, or if you had gone down a secret route, then you could shake a stick at, and they were all under the tiller namespace at that stage. Now they're under the namespace of where you deployed your Helm chart. But the point is, there was a series of failed revisions that the OP wanted to get rid of. And I was able to say, look, you can go in, remove it like any resource object, the secret's in it. And the person just wanted to know, would it be a good idea going forward to have that as functionality? So I'm just throwing it out there, probably a yes or no, or what do people think?
Yeah, so if I understand, if I remember right here, and somebody else can correct me, we by default set the limit to 10, but that's for good releases. If you start having all these failures, 10, 20, 30 in a row, we don't do it until there's a good release again to garbage collect all that. Is that right? So if somebody's got some CI system that's pushing or pulling and trying to apply the same thing over and over and over, and it fails, and you don't have anything that collects it, you could just quickly have all of these release objects filled with failures. And then you want to go clean some of that stuff up. And I think we've heard this over and over. And so what I would probably start with is a plugin that could test some of this out, and then we could see whether we could pull it in. I'm almost wondering whether, with Git, there's the Git GC command for garbage collection that happens mostly transparently behind the scenes, but you can occasionally call it directly and do things. I wonder if something like that, where we could say garbage collect releases this many of them you want to leave, and then it'll go and do it manually for somebody. And that could probably be a plugin to start out. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Yeah, it's not a bad idea, considering we generally send people in the back door, so to speak. We tell them go into the cluster and do it, which can have unforeseen circumstances. If you get your filter wrong.
But we could do this. Somebody could do it as a plugin and just call it like garbage collection, GC, just like Git does. And then we could possibly, if it works out well, roll it into Helm itself as a backdoor command. I don't know what people feel about it. I'm just spitballing.
Thanks, Matt. Anyone else?
Anybody disagree with my idea? Okay.
Okay, so what I'll do, if nobody else is coming on, I'll raise it as a feature and put the feedback in there, Matt, and say, right, here's the ID, plug in, and if somebody has the bandwidth then to go and do it, fair enough. And we'll see where that goes. Okay, thank you.
All right, and Farina, you have the next one on the list, dependency injection.
Yeah, so I'm working on this issue here. I think, where is it? Matt Butcher, I think it was you, already approved it. Let me open it up. Somebody did. Yeah. And it was about fix the plugin behavior, because the plugin has the wrong directory. For a certain plugin behavior, it can have the wrong directory location. And the fix invoked CLI.new. And what that immediately does is it causes, and if somebody's got a better way to do this, I would love to know if you dig into the linked pull request. That means that an outside application, whether it's a long running one or a CLI that wants to use the plugin installer, can no longer have its own environmental variable names, because there's no way to pass stuff in. It automatically does Helm. We tightly couple kind of our client environmental variables into this other package that deals with plugins, right? It's kind of this tight coupling, because we don't have a nice way to inject that information after the fact now. I'm digging through the code. I could not come up with another way to inject it. And maybe somebody else has an idea here, but I couldn't come up with another way to do it. And so it seems like this is something we'll just have to do for Helm 3 to fix this bug, but I really don't like the way this works. It would be nice to be able to have something else where we could inject it somewhere. And that immediately got me thinking dependency injection containers, or what people will do across Go sometimes is use contexts. And with context, you can just make another context and wrap a variable on a parent. It's kind of dirty and ugly, but it serves the same purpose. And I'm wondering what folks think about that idea, or maybe we've got another way to solve this problem here, so we don't tightly couple those, but we're not going to think of everything to inject it. And so how can we kind of work this out so we have the ability to pass things around more easily in Helm 4? And dependency injection is what I would have done in other languages in the past. What do folks think here?
Okay, so to be clear, are you objecting to pull request 10000000, however many zeros, 8, or are you just suggesting a topic for Helm 4? Because I don't know of another. I see what he's doing, and I don't see him breaking any of our conventions.
No, I don't see him breaking any of our conventions. The tight coupling, this adds a new tight coupling. So right now I can use the plugin installer without tying it to, or the plugin package at all, without being it tightly coupled to Helm's environment variable names. And so I work on another project, Hipper, and we want to do plugins and things like that. And we will have to duplicate this code rather than just being able to use the package, because it'll be now tied to Helm's environment variable names where it wasn't before. By just using CLI.new, that becomes the new coupling. We can't pass in that direction. Now, I don't know another way to handle this in Helm v3. I've worked through it. I can't figure out another way to do it. So if somebody has an idea, I would love to know it. Otherwise, I'll approve it and we'll merge it, because I can't come up with another way to handle this. But I think it would be great if we had a way to avoid this in the future. And since I figured we could talk Helm v4 for a minute here and say, what could or should we start looking at doing there? And I don't know if dependency injection would be a good idea, or like a dependency injection container, or using a context. What would be a good way to do it if we were talking Helm 4? And also, if people have any ideas, let me know. And this one.
I don't, I started to type it and I'll just say it. I think a context object for a lot of these things would be helpful. Directories and static things that are basically strings and primitive types like that, they're probably easier to handle as using a context object. But I wouldn't object to trying to figure out how to build a dependency injection library for, or a pattern that we could use across the CLI to lib boundary that we tried to establish in Helm 2 or Helm 3. So
yeah, okay. Does anybody have thoughts on context versus dependency injection? I know context is pretty popular in Kubernetes, but you have to keep creating new context objects for everything you add to the thing. You can't just add things to the existing context object, which is kind of an odd pattern to me, but maybe somebody knows something about it I don't.
I don't have anything off. Yeah, sorry, go on.
Oh, I was wondering, do we have to consider how interactive use versus use in people's CI systems may differ when it comes to that? Or would either be fine?
I think it'd be fine either way. Martin?
Yeah, I don't have anything off the top of my head, but are we going to set up kind of maybe a group at some stage to sit down over the overall SDK and have a look at, revisiting it for Helm 4, or have you started that work with Scott? I think you were mentioning, because maybe all this comes in under that, how we look at the SDK, how we want the separation and so forth, because obviously as people are using it more and more, we're starting to see the constraints.
Yeah, I think we'll have to. On this one, I would set up a meeting and start pinging folks who are doing a lot of Helm stuff. Scott and what they're doing over there with their controller. There's a handful of things in SUSE. We've got folks who have another operator that does that stuff that's built into K3S with Helm. There's a bunch of those out there. So we'll probably want to meet with folks and start talking to them, or folks using the API just to see what they would think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll help out with that as well, if you want.
Okay, and to take a quick break, we are supported by you folks at home. So if anybody would like to volunteer for moderator next week, looks like we have notes for next week, or triage, please add it to the chat.
I'll volunteer as tribute for triage.
Okay, and now back to our discussion. Next on the list is, oh, sorry.
I was just gonna ask about, the Helm 4. We're saying that, meetings are gonna be set up, et cetera. I'm wondering if KubeCon is a good place to have a working group, or I don't know if it's happening. I don't even know, but
Can we wait a week or two on that? I think you bring up a good point. Is it happening and who's going? If I'm going to be honest with you, I've been chatting with folks, and some people say they're not going. Other people say they are. Other folks have contingency plans all the way to the point of, will it go virtual? I think there's a lot of unknowns, and it might be worth waiting a couple of weeks so some of those unknowns can become knowns before we put in time to planning. That's just my 2 cents.
Karen did already request space for us to do a Helm 4 planning session if we want to at KubeCon. So it is at least reserved for us if we decide to do that. But yeah, we haven't planned anything other than making sure we have the space.
Can that be connected up so it can be virtual? What do you think, Matt?
hybrid.
Yeah, or hybrid, whatever way you want to call it. Yeah.
My understanding is that we will have Wi-Fi everywhere, but that's about as much as we get out of that stuff. I don't know what their plans are for the hybrid thing. So
Next time we meet with the CNCF staff, that's a question we can ask.
I think we can probably commit to, like, I can commit to, if I'm in the room and there is Wi-Fi or cell signal, I'm perfectly happy to join a device. Will the CNCF have like a whole wired room situation? Perhaps not, but we can probably do a device into the meeting.
Okay, we have 2 more discussion items. So let's get back into that. Martin, you had some backwards compatibility questions on interfaces.
Yeah. So this is an interesting one. So we have our backwards compatibility, and we always look at the APIs, but I can never remember the interface coming up into it. And why I say this is there's PR at the moment that's not far off getting in for 3.7. Its number is 9702. And Fisher did a really good comment where he said, well, actually, you're adding a new API to the interface. You're breaking backwards compatibility on the interface. And then the person who pushed it, Mike Nee, made a really good point. But hang on here a second. A couple of months ago, you merged a PR that added an API to the interface. So I think maybe Butch, you brought it up in the last while about something from Go saying around respecting your interfaces. And it makes sense, because if you have an interface and then someone puts a new API in, then you haven't implemented the interface. I just wonder here, and I'm not saying the person that's pushing the PR is against us saying to him, look, you might have to create a new interface here or extend it as a new interface. But I just wonder where we stand on this one, because I think it's a piece of functionality that's out there since May. We probably can get it in for 3.7, but we just make a decision, basically.
I will say real quick, this is not documented in the backwards compatibility rules.
Yeah, I put that down in the thing. Yeah, I would say that. I couldn't find it, so I was hoping,
but it is documented in Go's recommended stability or guidelines, which we say in the document that we follow.
Okay.
If we
adding, modifying an interface is a break and change, because doing an upgrade, then your interface is not going to be satisfied if there's a new function added.
But I'm kind of curious where we change that, because it's been the policy for years and years now.
Well,
I'll go look at the issue.
If you go to 8363, we did merge a PR that broke the interface. So,
Yeah, it
and
looks
I think
like
that
it might have just been something missed.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think what I might do is I'll respond to the person that pushed the PR and say, look, you know, yeah, that's correct. It's something that fell through the cracks. And those two people are going to be expelled forever and never allowed back into the community. Something like that. No, that's a joke. Sorry. So what we'll do is I'll just say, look, sorry, yeah, that's something got missed, and we'll do you mind putting in a new interface for the time being, and then it can be merged back in for Helm 4. Put a comment around that. Does that sound okay? Okay, thank you.
Okay, and the last item on the list was Bridget for adding triage maintainers.
Right. I know we talked about adding some triage maintainers. I'm happy Farina volunteered as tribute this time. I know we've been kind of catch as catch can over the busy days of August for triage assignments per week. So I was wondering if we have any status update on people applying or being nominated or becoming triage maintainers, or I know that HIP was created, and I'm wondering what the current plan is with that.
Just for me, what would a maintainer do? What would be the role?
Let me pull up the HIP. The idea being that people would become Helm maintainers in a triage capacity and not be responsible for the releases, but would be able to apply labels and triage issues, that sort of thing.
I see. Okay, yeah.
I do see that one of the Matts who suggested this is not actually here, so I'm not positive. Perhaps one of the other Matts has an opinion.
But we're still gonna rotate the triage for the week, right? That doesn't mean that person
Right. This is
owns
like
the
a
week.
role that would
Okay,
be
yeah,
added on
that's a new
GitHub.
role. I got it.
Yeah, so the role's been added. It's been approved to have the role, and we've got the first person going through the rigmarole to get approved to be one of those folks. In fact, Matt Fisher reminded me this morning again that that I needed to weigh in on that. And so I'm not sure where they are in the approval count on the percentages yet. I haven't looked, but they're going through that now. And I know they have, I think, a majority already. I'm not sure if it's at the super majority point yet. We just got to chase people down and get them to weigh in.
Yeah, I think it needs a few more votes, Matt.
Yeah. But getting votes around here, because of everybody, it comes into email, and you know how things get missed, or in some email clients, it gets put into the unfocused category, and you may not even notice it. We, you know, nobody knows what that's like. You miss things, and so we have to track people down and remind them to vote. And so that's just kind of a normal thing. We'll give it another week or so, and hopefully we'll be there, and we'll have our first person, and we can call it implemented.
Yeah, I think the beatings are going to continue until morale improves. I think is what's going to happen on this one. So.
You know, our email clients know so well what we don't care about, and they just throw all that stuff in there. At least that's what's been burning me.
Hey, stop blaming the email clients.
You have no idea how much important stuff I miss. All right. Do we have anything else? Oh, it's time.
We're at time. So thanks for your participation, everybody. And we'll see you all next week.
Except me, I'll be out.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Have fun without me. Bye.
Take care.